Billionaire CEO mocked black waitress in Arabic. Seconds later, she answered back fluently. Before we dive into the story, please hit the subscribe button. Also, drop a comment and let us know which city you're watching from. We love hearing where our community is tuning in from. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. You let someone like her handle Crystal? What is this? A charity? The word sliced through the opulent air of the Grandview ballroom like a blade through silk. Sharper than the clink of champagne flutes, louder than the soft jazz floating beneath the crystal chandeliers. Laughter followed, tight, rehearsed, the kind that masks cruelty with sophistication. Zara Williams didn't flinch. She stood motionless, silver tray balanced in her steady hands, her black uniform melting into the golden shadows of Manhattan's most exclusive venue. In that moment, she wasn't a person to them. She was scenery, a prop in their theater of wealth and privilege, the only black waitress in a room drowning in designer gowns, platinum watches, and thinly veiled arrogance. She placed the crystal glass down with practiced gentleness. No tremor in her fingers, no crack in her composure. Then her voice cut through the silence, not in English, but in flawless Arabic. The crystal does not diminish the worth of the one who holds it. It only reflects the dignity of the one who drinks from it. Perfect, clear, confident, precise. Silence crashed over the table like a wave. Every face turned. The billionaire who had mocked her, Hassan Malik, blinked as if he'd witnessed something impossible. A black woman speaking his language with more grace than he had ever possessed. This wasn't just a response. This was a seismic shift in power. Zara Williams was never meant to fade into backgrounds. She grew up in Detroit, Michigan, in a neighborhood where hope and hardship lived side by side. Her father, a retired Army sergeant, believed in structure, discipline, and showing up even when the world expected you to disappear. Her mother, a linguistics professor at a small community college, believed in the power of words, how language shaped identity, how names carried legacies, how silence could be both weapon and wound. By age 10, Zara was already fluent in French and reading Arabic poetry by candlelight when the electricity was shut off. Their small apartment didn't have much, but it overflowed with books, towers of knowledge stacked like pillars throughout their living room. Words weren't just for communication. They were armor. They were sanctuary. At 17, she earned a full scholarship to one of the nation's premier international relations programs. Her professors called her exceptional. Her classmates called her the quiet storm. She could dissect diplomatic documents in Arabic faster than most could skim them in English. During a university panel, she once corrected a visiting ambassador with such respect and fluency that he offered her an internship immediately. But life doesn't always reward brilliance. 2 weeks before her internship was to begin, her mother collapsed. Stage 4 cancer. Aggressive, unforgiving. Zara left university within 48 hours. No hesitation, no debate. Her mother came. First. Always. The scholarship was suspended. The internship vanished. She took whatever work she could find, barista, office assistant, tutor, eventually landing at Le Bernardin Elite in Manhattan, where the wealthy went to see and be seen. The B. Pay was decent, the hours brutal, but the tips kept her mother's medicine cabinet stocked. Most people who met her there never knew. They saw the uniform, the apron, the practiced smile. They didn't see the multilingual scholar, the woman who once stood at the podium of the National Arabic Poetry recitation. The daughter taught that language could cut deeper than any insult if wielded with truth. On the night of that gala, she carried all of it in silence, until silence was no longer enough. The Metropolitan Charity Gala was everything you'd expect from an evening designed to dazzle the elite. Held at the Grandview Ballroom in the heart of Manhattan, it glittered like a crown jewel beneath the city's starlit sky. Valets and tailored black guided guests past velvet ropes and marble columns. Inside, Opulence saturated every surface. Crystal. Chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, casting diamonds of light across floors so polished they mirrored every movement. Each table was draped in ivory silk, set with bone china, and crowned with centerpieces that belonged in museums. Towering glass vases filled with white roses and orchids, surrounded by flickering candles that bathed the space in warm, golden light. The air itself smelled expensive. Aged wine, designer cologne, and floral arrangements that cost more than most people's monthly rent. This was a fundraising gala hosted by Malik Industries, headlined by its charismatic CEO, Hassan Malik. Billionaire, media darling, master of charm when it served him, razor-tongued when it didn't. The guest list read like a who's who of power: Hollywood moguls, politicians, fashion icons, business titans. It wasn't just charity, it was a social power grid in real time, where your table assignment declared your status. Zara wasn't supposed to be there. Her co-worker had called in sick last minute, and management pulled her from the backup list. Just for tonight, her manager had said. High-end crowd. Good tips if you stay invisible. She didn't argue. Rent was due. Her mother's medication was running low, so she pulled her natural hair into an elegant bun, polished her shoes until they gleamed, and walked into the lion's den with a tray in one hand and every ounce of her dignity tucked behind her calm exterior. The calm moment she stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. Eyes swept over her without stopping, judging, dismissing. She was the only black waitress on the floor that night. Her uniform was immaculate, her posture perfect. But to them, she was invisible. Deliberately invisible in all the ways they thought. Didn't matter. She approached table 7, where Hassan Malik himself sat surrounded by power, wealth, and polished cruelty. That's where it all began. It started the way most cruelty does. Quietly, casually, dressed up as humor. Zara approached table 7 with her usual composure. Her tray was steady, her expression neutral, her focus on precision. She placed folded linen napkins at each setting, ensuring every edge aligned perfectly. She had learned that perfection made her invisible, that if nothing was out of place, people wouldn't look too closely. But invisibility couldn't stop the first comment. "Look at her hair," whispered a woman in champagne silk, her platinum blonde curls, sculpted by someone paid $1,000 an hour. She turned to her companion with a smirk. "It's like she's hiding a bird's nest up there," the man chuckled. Zara said nothing. She'd heard worse. Another guest leaned forward, swirling his wine, studying Zara like she was part of the decor. "Think she understands anything we're saying?" His voice was meant to be overheard. Probably just, "Yes, sir," and right away. Sharp laughter followed, designed to pierce. Zara kept moving. She refilled water glasses, adjusted a slightly askew knife, and nodded politely when no one met her eyes. Then Hassan spoke. He was reclining in his chair, tie loosened, wine in hand. His voice was smooth, but heavy with disdain. He said something in Arabic, and the table erupted in laughter. But the words weren't just jokes. They were targeted. He looked directly at Zara and said, "This one reminds me of the servants back home. You can dress them up, let them handle crystal, but they still move like they belong in the fields." The insult hit like a physical blow. Not just to Zara, but to everyone who understood. Yet the room didn't gasp. No one stopped him. They laughed. Full-throated, teeth-bared laughter. Zara paused, tray still balanced. She felt heat rise in her ears, but her expression remained unchanged. She had learned to wear calm like armor. She turned slightly, set down Hassan's wineglass beside his plate, and straightened. When her voice came, it would not be loud, but it would be unforgettable. Zara placed the final glass on the table with steady hands, though her pulse thundered loud enough to echo in her ears. Her back was straight, her chin raised, not in defiance, but in dignity. For a moment she stood still, letting their laughter settle like smoke after flame. The room didn't notice, not yet. Then she turned her head. Her eyes met Hassan's, calm and unblinking. He smirked again, clearly assuming she had no idea what he'd said, that she would swallow the insult, smile through it, and retreat into silence. She didn't. In perfect, polished Arabic, older and more classical than the street dialect Hassan had used, Zara spoke. The crystal does not diminish the one who holds it. It only reflects the dignity of the one who drinks from it. The room fell silent. Hassan's smile vanished. His wine glass hovered mid-air, the liquid inside barely swaying as if time itself had paused to listen. The woman in champagne silk blinked, confusion spreading across her face like a stain. The man beside her coughed into his napkin, laughter caught in his throat. No one moved, no one spoke, because the words hadn't just been beautiful. They had been intentional, clear, fluent, and impossible to dismiss. Hassan tried to recover, his jaw tightening, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe even fear. He knew that Arabic. He knew that tone. And he knew she hadn't just memorized a phrase. She understood everything. Zara didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her silence after the words spoke even louder than the sentence itself. She bowed her head slightly, not in submission, but as a closing statement that allowed no rebuttal. She turned and moved to the next table, leaving a trail of stunned silence behind her. Around the ballroom, whispers started, soft at first, cautious. Did she just speak Arabic? Perfectly. Who is she? Amira Malik, Hassan's daughter, stared. Across the table, her gaze fixed on Zara like she was watching a myth unfold in real time. She didn't speak, but her hand slowly unclenched from her napkin, and her expression shifted from discomfort to something dangerously close to admiration. Somewhere in the back of the room, the balance of power quietly began to shift. The truth about Zara Williams wasn't something she wore openly. It lived quietly in the spaces between memory and sacrifice, stitched between loss and silence. Most people never saw past her apron, her calm demeanor, her precise way of pouring wine or clearing plates. But if you had looked closer, you might have noticed how she pronounced foreign names, how she adjusted her posture when overhearing accented English, or how she paused when someone misused a word. Because Zara wasn't just a waitress. She had once been a scholar, a rising star in international relations. At 20, she stood on a conference stage delivering a speech in 5 languages. Journalists wrote about her like she was the future of diplomacy. Her name appeared alongside Rhodes Scholars and Fulbright recipients. Her dream had always been simple: to speak for those who couldn't. To sit at tables where decisions were made and ensure no voice went unheard because of language barriers. That dream carried her through endless nights of study, translation competitions, and relentless pursuit of perfection. Then her mother got sick. Stage 4 lung cancer. It spread fast, too fast. The kind of diagnosis that stops everything else in its tracks. Zara left her fellowship the day she got the call. She didn't wait for permission. There was no time for negotiation. The scholarship board tried to convince her to stay, promising they'd hold her place. But she couldn't. Her mother was her world, every book she'd ever read, every word she'd mastered, it. All began with her mother's voice at bedtime, reading aloud in Arabic, French, Spanish, English. She spent 3 years as a full-time caregiver, working whatever jobs she could find to pay for treatment. The languages never left her, but they became quieter, tucked behind medical forms and grocery lists. After her mother passed, Zara didn't return to academia. She didn't need accolades anymore. She just needed to survive. New York was expensive. Rent was relentless. But the restaurant paid well enough, and the quiet gave her space to heal. She thought that part of her life, the scholar, the speaker, was behind her. Until tonight. Until Hassan gave her a reason to remember who she truly was. Before we proceed further to the story, please hit the subscribe button. The silence that followed Zara's first response had weight. It settled over the table like thick fog, heavy and still. Some guests shifted uncomfortably, unsettled by how quickly the evening's tone had changed. Others stared at their wine glasses, pretending they hadn't laughed moments earlier. But not everyone was ready to surrender. One of Hassan's associates, a man named Marcus Chen, leaned forward with a smirk. He was a renowned economist who filled lecture halls and morning news segments, always the skeptic, always the challenger. "She's got a poetic tongue," Marcus said, tapping his glass. "But let's see if she can do more than recite pretty lines." Hassan didn't stop him. In fact, he nodded slightly, welcoming the distraction, needing someone else to chip away at the attention now circling Zara. Marcus switched to Arabic, not casual dialect but formal, dense academic language. "Tell me," he asked, "do you believe the economic expansion in the Maghreb region is sustainable, or is it simply another bubble inflated by foreign interests and short-term infrastructure deals?" The question wasn't just difficult. It was layered, academic, a trap disguised as curiosity. Several guests leaned in, expecting her to stumble, to reveal herself as a fluke. Zara turned slowly toward Marcus, her eyes calm, her face unreadable. She didn't rush. She didn't fumble. When she answered, her voice was soft but deliberate, her Arabic so polished and deeply rooted in knowledge that it made the hair on some necks stand up. She dissected the question piece by piece, cited recent trade data, quoted a World Bank report from 2 months ago, even referenced historical patterns of post-colonial growth in North Africa. Her analysis was sharp, factual, and laced with subtle commentary that only someone with real experience would know how to deliver. Marcus blinked. Then he nodded once, slowly. "Impressive," he muttered in English. Across the table, a diplomat cleared his throat, clearly startled. "That was not what I expected." Hassan said nothing, but his hand tightened around his wine glass stem. For the first time all night, Zara wasn't seen as the help. She wasn't seen through their original lens at all. She had shifted the entire room, and no one could put her back where she came from. Zara stood still for a moment, letting the room absorb her words. The echoes of her economic analysis hadn't faded, but she could feel the shift. Eyes that once skimmed over her were now locked in place, curious, unsettled. Then she reached into her apron. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't meant to be. But the simple gesture carried weight that pulled every gaze toward her. From the inner pocket, she withdrew a small worn envelope. Its edges were frayed, the paper slightly yellowed, but the seal was unmistakable, embossed gold with the logo of Malik Industries. The moment Hassan saw it, something in his expression cracked. "I found this again last week," Zara said quietly. Her voice was steady, but beneath it ran years of unspoken history. "I wasn't sure why I kept it. Maybe to remind myself it happened." She held the envelope up, not like a trophy, but like a memory. "It's a letter," she continued. "A formal invitation. A scholarship offer for a summer mentorship program. Signed by Hassan Malik himself. Dated 4 years ago." Gasps rippled across the room. "I earned it," she added. "Back when I was the top language student in my department. I was meant to study. Under the best. Until life shifted." She didn't say what happened. She didn't need to. The envelope said enough. Hassan's face went blank. No words came. He stared at the letter like it was a ghost from a past he had no memory of, but knew he had shaped. "I never accepted the offer," Zara said, her tone calm, without accusation. "My mother fell ill before I could reply. But I always wondered, if I had shown up to your office then, dressed like I am now, would you have opened the door?" Silence. No one moved. No one laughed. Because that question wasn't rhetorical. It was a mirror, reflecting every assumption, every prejudice, every quiet decision to judge someone by what they wore, where they stood, or what they served. Zara gently folded the envelope and slid it back into her pocket. Then she went back to work. But the room wasn't the same, and neither was she in their eyes. The silence that followed Zara's words wasn't just awkward, it was charged. It hummed under the golden chandeliers and curled into every expensive tablecloth. For the first time all night, no one reached for wine. No one dared speak. Until Amira, Hassan's daughter, shifted in her seat. She had sat still through it all, fingers twisted in her lap. She looked nothing like her father in that moment. No arrogance, no calculated charm. Just wide, steady eyes and a weight in her chest she could no longer ignore. She stood, her chair scraping softly against polished floor, delicate, but firm enough to break the stillness. She walked around the table slowly, purposefully, and stopped. Besides Zara, who had just refilled another glass without a word, everyone watched. "I want to apologize," Amira said quietly. "To you?" Zara turned, unsure if Amira meant it, but her voice didn't waver. Her posture didn't shift. This wasn't performance. This was personal. "I've been in rooms like this my entire life," Amira continued. "I've seen people dismissed for how they look, how they speak, how they stand. And I said nothing. That makes me complicit too." A murmur rolled through the crowd. Guests exchanged glances, some startled, some unsure what to do. Then, unexpectedly, a woman at a nearby table stood. She wore navy blue with a diplomatic badge, pinned beneath her collarbone. "She's right," the woman said. "Too many of us sit quiet while the room gets colder." One by one, others followed. A silver-haired man in a tailored suit nodded slowly and stood. A younger woman at the room's edge rose as well, hands clasped, gaze locked on Zara with quiet admiration. Even a well-known actor, seated discreetly at the back, stood with a slight bow of respect. It wasn't everyone. Some guests stayed seated, stiff and defensive, their smiles tight. But the room had tilted. The laughter that once filled the air had turned to reflection. The smirks had been replaced with questions, and in the middle of it all, Zara stood, not as a servant, but as a symbol of grace, of power withheld, of truth finally spoken aloud. She hadn't asked for this support. She hadn't needed saving. But the fact that it came, that people finally saw her, meant everything. By morning, the story had exploded. Someone at the gala had filmed the moment on their phone, grainy, unedited, raw footage showing Zara's calm rebuttal in Arabic and the stunned silence that followed. By dawn, it was everywhere. Social media exploded with hashtags like Speak with Dignity, Zara Williams, and Ja Black Excellence. Within 12 hours, the clip had crossed 5 million views. Celebrities reposted it, journalists dissected it, activists praised it. Quote cards and memes spread like wildfire. The comments poured in. She said what we've all been dying to say. The way she carried herself, chills. This woman is a national treasure. But it wasn't just admiration. There were consequences. Hassan Malik's name was suddenly everywhere, and not in the way he was accustomed to. The backlash was swift. Board. Members called emergency meetings. By evening, Malik Industries released a statement about reviewing the incident with utmost seriousness. Sponsors pulled out of upcoming deals. A prominent women-led investment firm issued a public letter refusing future partnerships. Media outlets unearthed old interviews, questioning his long-standing behavior patterns. He wasn't canceled overnight, but the shine was gone. The myth had cracked. Clips of Zara's words were dubbed into different languages and aired on international news. An education nonprofit launched a scholarship fund in her name within 48 hours, dedicated to supporting young women of color in language and diplomacy programs. Zara never posted anything, never gave press conferences. She showed up for her next shift, just like always. Reporters waited outside the restaurant. Fans left thank you notes, flowers, even children's drawings at the host stand. One little girl left a picture of a superhero, with curly hair holding a tray like a shield. The manager tried to give Zara time off. She refused. "I didn't do it to go viral," she said quietly. "I just didn't want to be silent anymore." And that truth, her truth, was what made everything resonate. Because while the world debated politics of power and language, Zara had already spoken her piece. In a world so loud, it was the quiet dignity that made everyone listen. A week passed. The news cycle shifted. Another scandal, another headline. That's how the world works. But for those who had witnessed that night at the Grandview, something had changed forever. Zara returned to work as always. Same uniform, same quiet grace. She didn't walk taller, but people moved differently around her now. Colleagues who once called her the quiet one now nodded with different respect. The kitchen staff, mostly immigrants like her mother had been, started calling her Professor. The restaurant manager offered her a promotion. She politely declined. "I'm not looking to climb," she said. "I'm just trying to stay steady." Then one afternoon, Amira returned. She arrived without fanfare, dressed simply in jeans and a blouse. She sat at the bar and waited until Zara came around. In her hands, Amira held a small notebook. "It belonged to my mom," she said. She kept notes about everyone she mentored, even ones she never got to meet in person. "She had a page for you. I thought you should have it." Zara took it slowly. She didn't open it. Not yet. Some things deserve to be read in silence. Amira smiled. "My mom used to say that some people carry words like armor. You didn't just carry them, you used them." Zara nodded, her voice low. "Your mother was the first person who saw me, before anyone else knew I was here." Outside the restaurant, a child passed by holding her parents' hand. She pointed through the glass and whispered, "That's her. That's the lady who speaks all the languages." Zara smiled gently. Not everything needs a grand ending. Not every victory comes with confetti and parades. Sometimes it looks like a folded letter in your pocket. Sometimes it sounds like silence that finally means peace. And sometimes it feels like standing exactly where you belong, not because someone let you in, but because you know you earned it. That was enough. And for Zara Williams, it always had been. Sometimes dignity doesn't need a spotlight. It doesn't raise its voice or slam fists on tables. Sometimes dignity just stands quietly, speaks clearly, and waits for the room to catch up. Zara's story reminds us that our value isn't tied to job titles, wardrobes, or the assumptions people make when we enter a room. It's tied to how we carry ourselves when tested, how we speak when no one expects us to know the language, how we respond when underestimated. What Zara did wasn't just about language. It was about truth, about standing in a space designed to overlook her and refusing to shrink. Maybe that's something we all need to remember. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to break things to make change. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply know who you are and act like it. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever had to prove you belonged, if you've ever swallowed words you should have spoken aloud, this story is for you. Because stories like these don't just entertain, they remind us who we are. And sometimes, that reminder is exactly what we need to find our voice.